and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's Zoom from Bushed. Tonight, we're proud to welcome Dr. Kathryn Murray, a highly respected educator and consultant with more than 40 years' experience working with children, families, and organisations around the world. Dr. Kathryn will share brain-based strategies to help parents and educators keep children focused, motivated, and emotionally supported during remote learning. Using her BrainSet formula, she'll draw from neuroscience, emotional intelligence, and effective communication to equip you with proven tools for creating calmer and more engaging learning environments, whether at home or in the classroom. So sit back and enjoy, and welcome, Kathryn.
Thank you, Charles, for that lovely introduction, and thanks, Lynn, for having me as well. And I'm really excited to speak to so many people this evening. I've prepared a little PowerPoint to guide our hour, because we only have an hour together, and I've got lots of things to say, but I'm trying to control myself and just give you an hour of information. So I'm going to just share my screen now. So just if you just bear with me for a moment while I get the PowerPoint ready for you, and then we'll get started. Working our way through this session. And as I say, we've only got an hour or so, so I'll try and keep to that time frame because I know everybody's busy and everybody's doing things.
And Kathryn, if anybody's got any questions, they can drop them in the chat and we'll come to them at the end of the presentation.
Yes, that would be amazing. I'm trying to leave a little bit of time, everyone, at the end so we can get to some questions. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be awesome. All right, well, you know, we've named this Keeping Remote Learning Alive, and it's how to use the environment to maintain interest and engagement. And Charles has given me a big introduction there, so I've got a lot to live up to, I think. So we'll get started with that. Now, whenever I do any work with any groups at all, I always start with a breathing exercise, and there's a couple of reasons for this. And if you're not doing this with your children at the moment, it might be something that you want to consider. When we take deep breaths, it adds to that, you know, that meditation thing. You know, we all know about breathing, and that's a good thing. But there's also a physiological reason why we need to be taking deep breaths before we're going into some sort of learning session. And it's because it calms our brain and brings us to this state of calm awareness. So when we do that, when we take these lovely big breaths, and there's a technique to it, we actually clear and reduce any levels of cortisol that we might have in the top part of our brain here, which is the thinking part of our brain, our neocortex. And if we've had a stressful day and we've been rushing, and maybe you've just settled the children now, and you've been rushing to, you know, jump onto the computer and start this, and maybe, you know, you've had a busy day already, there may be some residual stress and residual cortisol sitting in your brain. Now, when you've got that, you end up having this thing called a foggy brain, which means we can't remember as well, we can't think as well. We can still do it, and we can't make decisions as well because there's still too much cortisol in our brain. So when we do this particular breathing technique, we put oxygenated blood through our body, and that washes the cortisol through our system a little bit more and clears it for us, and we end up with calm awareness. We also have a vagus nervous system that goes from our brain that goes all the way down into our gut. And, you know, people say, you know, what does your gut say? And, you know, when we're feeling a bit anxious or we're stressed or we're worried about something, our gut sort of rumbles and turns. That's actually right. It's actually true because there's a nerve called the vagus nervous system that goes down into your gut. So this particular type of breathing also alleviates the pressure in that nervous system. So we're going to do this together. It's called 4-4-8 breathing. And so we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. We're going to hold it for 4 seconds, and we're going to blow out the breath for 8 seconds. And when we blow it out, that's the important part. And we're going to make the sound of the ocean. So we're going to go shh as we blow out for 8. I'll do the counting. The shh part is also like a bit of a hum in your ears, and that also helps that vagus nervous system that we all have. So I'll do the counting for us. We're going to do 3 rounds of 4-4-8 breathing, and then we're going to get into the content. But for now, we're calming our brain so we're ready to be open to listen and to learn together. So please take everything out of your hands, put your feet on the floor. You can either leave your eyes open or close your eyes, lean back in the chair, and let's get ready to do our breathing. Okay, ready? Let's go in, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4, and out. Shh, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and in, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last one. In, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now our brain is a little calmer and we're in this state called calm awareness. And my mantra is a calm brain is a thinking brain. So if you don't remember anything else I tell you this evening, just remember that. A calm brain is a thinking brain. And breathing like we just did helps to calm the brain. Okay, so who am I really? Well, I work across the world and I am the creator of something called the Brain Set Environments Formula. It's an original way of working with children that helps us set up the environment in a particular way that helps to calm the brain and helps to support the needs of children's developing brains. But you know what? It also helps our brain too because we've all got one. We've all got a brain. And so the strategies that I'm going to share with you this evening, or some of them, because I don't have time to share everything, but what I'm going to share with you tonight is a part of the Brain Set Environments formula that I train teachers in and work with parents and corporate organisations across the world. So you can see some of my accreditations there. The one that I'm most excited about is the very top one. I'm the mother of 4 great adults, and my 4 children were all born within 5 years. So, there was a very busy childhood time for a while there. And they have grown to be great adults. And I think for all of us as parents and teachers, we just want the children that we have with us, whether we're working with them or whether they're our own children, we just want them to be good human beings, I think, and enjoy life and enjoy the world around them and be able to navigate the world. So if we can give them really great skills when they're young, they are going to be able to navigate what comes to them in their future careers because, the careers that some of our children are going to have haven't even been invented yet. So we have to give them a really great foundation. And even if they're going to work in the family business, they still have to have these different skills to help them be successful in their life. So let's have a look at how we can do that. We're going to talk about the challenges that you might have and the expectations that are put on all of us. So we all have this bit of pressure. We're going to talk a little bit about brain science, how we can work with children's interests to support their learning, the type of environment that you can set up. I'm going to share with you my 3 pillars of design and 16 design elements that we should have either in our homes or in our classrooms. And then we'll do a little bit of evaluation and reflection on our own spaces. So that's in the next 60 minutes or so. So let's just think for a moment what your challenges are. So whether you're at home with your children and you're homeschooling your children, or whether you're a teacher or an educator that has joined us tonight and you're working with many children, think about what your biggest challenge is. We all have challenges. Sometimes it's behavior of the children. Sometimes them being disinterested in what they're doing, they're doing and what they're learning. Sometimes it's time, the resources that we have to use, the space that we have, and the challenge sometimes seems insurmountable. So we're down the bottom there now, trying to push that challenge up the hill. But you know what? There's someone at the top of the hill trying to help you and pull that back up. So in the chat box, just type in what you think your biggest challenge is at the moment. So you go for that and have a look and see what your challenge might be and just type it into the chat box, please. Just give you a couple of seconds to do that because I don't want to stop here. I want us to keep going. So just add your challenges even as I continue to speak. Please add in your challenges. Now, this might sound absolutely ridiculous, but it's great that you have challenges. Because if you have a challenge, it means you have a vision. You've got an idea of what you want, where you want to be, how you want to be teaching the children, how you want to be interacting the children, the outcomes that the children achieve. So if you have a challenge, that's fantastic. If you didn't have a challenge, it means you wouldn't have a vision. And that just means you don't care. So that's great that you've got a challenge. So if I know it sounds ridiculous, but actually give yourselves a pat on the back because yay, you got a challenge. It means you care, and you have a vision of how you want to do things. But there's also expectations that come in with that too, and that can be a challenge, meeting all of these expectations, because it could be from the family, your own family, or if you're a teacher, the children's families that you're working with, or it could be the curriculum. How do you know what to teach? How do you do that? It could be all the rules and regulations that you have to follow. It could be the children. What do they expect from you? And how can you meet those requirements? And can you be true to yourself when you're doing this teaching, either at home in your homeschool situation or in a classroom situation? How can you do what feels right for you and still manage all of these other expectations? Because remember, if there's no challenge, there's no vision. And if there's no vision, there's no expectations. And if we're not dealing with those, it means we're not really advocating for childhood and for children as a whole. So if we have a vision, we have expectations, and then we are advocating for young children and children's learning. So that's sort of where we want to be. And we all just try and do the best that we can, don't we? It's not always easy. You know, we have the good days, we have the not so good days. It's not always easy. But what I'm going to share with you as we move through these next, 50 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you ways that you can set up your environment that's going to support children's brains and your brain so that we can have a calmer environment. So remember the mantra? A calm brain's a thinking brain, remember? So that's what we're going to be looking at today. I want to go back to the beginning though, no matter how old your children are that you're working with. I want to go back to the beginning and just give you a bit of information about the brain. So the brain, as you know, is an amazing, incredible organ, and it has many regions in the brain. It's got the two hemispheres that go together, and it's a very complex organ. Now, as children develop in utero, so when you're pregnant with the baby, this brainstem here bit at the base here, which is this bit here where there's a bit of a hollow in the back of your skull. If you want to feel that, that's sort of where your brainstem is. And the brainstem starts to develop first in utero. And that's the part of the brain that is all about survival. That's making sure that you're going to survive. You're going to stay alive. So it starts growing from the bottom up. At birth, the brain is fully developed. So it looks like this. It's fully developed, but there's only 25% of the neural pathways developed inside the brain, meaning that there's enough connections in the brain so that a baby can look at you and bond with you, smile at you. You can smile back. It can, mirror what you're doing. So you're building that connection with the baby. It can cry. The baby can cry. It can suckle. It can do all of the things that's going to keep it alive. Because remember, the brainstem is the part that is developed first, and that is keeping the baby alive. So it's got enough neural pathways so that it can do all of those things. Now, by 2, there's 75% of neural pathways that have been developed in the brain. At 5, there's 90 or 92, depending on the research that you read. There's, well, let's say 90 or 92% of the brain is full of these neural pathways. That happens because of the range of experiences that the baby, the child, the preschooler experiences. So by giving children lots of experiences outside, inside, lots of sensory experiences, all of those things really start building all of these neural connections in the brain until inside the brain now looks like a web. And as children get older, that web of neural pathways starts to prune. because over time we realize that we don't need all of these neural pathways. We now know how to get from one place to the next. So we don't need all the extra pathways as well. And that's called pruning. And that happens, by about 14 or so, the neural pathways have pruned. Now, as the brain is developing all these neural pathways, we keep developing. And the brain isn't really fully developed until we're around 30, sort of either side of 30. So think about your own age and think about, if you're under 30, your brain is still developing. If you're over 30, well, we just develop in different ways and, we prune different things and, we replace them with things. So it's we've still got it, even if we're over 30. So this is a really important time, these first 5 years, and you will have heard that. It's the most important critical time for us to stimulate this neural pathway development in the brain. You can see by 5, 90% of the brain is fully developed. That's only 10. So we've got 10% to go by the time we're 30. And that is really just the pruning and the refining of what's already in the brain. So these neural pathways and the synapses join together and the electrical impulses fire, more rapidly with the range of experiences that children have. So it's important for us to read stories to children. It's important for us to talk to children and not just give instructions and directions. It's important to say, tell me about your car that you've just built. I wonder what would happen if we took one wheel off. I wonder what would happen if it was an electric car with no steering wheel. So we're getting children to be thinking themselves, and that's when those neural pathways all fire, and we're giving children lots of experiences, and the neural development happens more and more. Sensory development is really important too. And all of this goes along with the social, emotional, cognitive, language, and physical development that's already happening. Most of us are aware of these other developmental domains, but many of us don't think about the brain and what's happening with the brain. And the brain is orchestrating everything else. So we really have to be mindful of what's going on in a child's brain and how we can support that and how we can expand and extend that. Okay, there's a guy called John Medina, and he wrote a book, and it's called Brain Rules. And he writes about these 12 rules that we need to put in place to help the brains to develop in a positive way and in a very effectual way. So we haven't got time to be going through all of these, but I did want to bring a few things to your attention. The first one is about exploration. We are born natural explorers. So, we like to touch things. We like to smell things, we like to taste things, and I'm sure we've all seen babies put everything into their mouths because their lips are the most sensitive part of their body that they can use to decipher what the world is as they're trying to understand. So we've seen things like bark go into mouths, dirt go into mouths, toes go into mouths, as children are trying to navigate what's going on for them. So we are born natural explorers. The other thing is that we don't do boring. We don't pay attention to boring things. So this is playing in now to how we provide our learning materials for children and how we structure the learning experiences for children. So to start with, we're born natural explorers. So we want to explore things. We want to try things out. We don't just want to listen to things. We want to experiment and try things. We don't do boring things. So it means we have to mix things up a little bit, whether it's mixing up our environment or mixing up our tone of voice or mixing up where we're doing our teaching. We've got to mix it up a little bit so it's not boring. And the other thing is that we need to really focus on sensory engagement. We need to stimulate all of the senses as much as possible because we learn through sensory exposure. If you think about it, this brain that's in this skull, if we didn't have sensory input, that would just be a big blob of meat inside our skull. It's only because our senses are fed into the brain that we can make sense of the world. So we need to explore our senses as much as we possibly can, and we need to give children so many opportunities to use their senses to learn things. Now, there's this guy called Buckminster Fuller in America, and he says if you want to do something nice for a child, give them an environment. He was a visionary, and he said this, I don't know how many years ago, 50 years ago or something. And it's very, very true. We need to give children lots of different experiences. Alrighty, so we all have our spaces where we work with the children, whether it's a classroom situation or whether it's in your home and you've got a little classroom area in your home. We all get inspiration from how to set it up, from activities that we're going to do with the children. And oftentimes that comes from maybe it's TikTok. We look at all of those little clips that people make, or maybe it's Pinterest. We get inspired from Pinterest, or maybe it's some sort of social media, Facebook or Instagram or somewhere. Or we might ask one of our friends and someone might send us some inspirational images or a worksheet or something that we might think is a good idea. But that's all good to get an idea about that. But what you're seeing on those devices may not really relate to the children that you're working with. They might look really good and they might seem like a great idea, but they may not actually really connect with the children that we're working with. So how do we hook them in? Well, I call it fishing. And we hook children in by asking them what their interests are. So for your children, what are you interested in? Do you like fishing? Do you like riding the horses? Do you like picking the flowers? Do you like motorbikes? Do you like fairies? Do you like dinosaurs? What's the child's interest? And then what's your family's interest? Maybe you like to go camping. Maybe you like bonfires. Maybe you I don't know, maybe whatever your family does. And then what's going on in the community? Is there a rodeo happening in the community? Is there the football finals happening in the community? Is there something that's going on in the community? Because your child has an interest and your child is part of your family is part of the community. So all of those interests relate to the child. So you can start to think, oh, okay, I might, maybe we're talking about systems, and this is grade 5 work. So we're talking about systems. So it might be digestive system, but your child might like motorbikes. Well, the engine is a system. So although your curriculum requirement is to talk about systems, and the example they give is that a digestive system, you could maybe talk about a motorbike system, the engine system, and one of your other children might be really into cattle. So you talk about the digestive system of the cattle. Somebody else might be interested in something else, and you can relate that to some sort of system. So we're linking the curriculum requirements to the interest of the child, or you might be able to use your camping experiences, or the show that's coming to town. You might be able to link all of those things together with the material that you're meant to be teaching, the requirements from the curriculum or the expectations or the regulatory board that you might be following. If we can hook them in with those interests, then they are going to be intrinsically motivated. That means they're going to do it from the inside because they're interested and they want to do it. And so they'll go above and beyond because they're interested and they want to do more and more, and will end up doing project work. So that concept might go on for a couple of weeks. And in it, you can incorporate some numeracy, some maths, some literacy. You can incorporate science, health, anything that you need to, the arts, because you're basing it on the interest that the child has. The other thing that's really important is to have children up and moving. Children learn best when they move. So if you've got some sit-down work that needs to be done, fine, but let them run outside for a while. Go run in the paddock for a bit, come back in 10 minutes and let's go again. If you're a teacher in a classroom, same thing. Let the children move outside and then come in to do work inside. But even when you're inside, let children move around to be involved and experience different activities or different learning experiences in different spaces. I'll talk to you more about that in a moment when we get to the 3 pillars of design. But children are meant to move. If we can get children moving, it reduces the energy that gets built up inside. It reduces any behavior issues. It adds to the learning. It adds to that movement of cortisol through the brain because children are breathing a little more because they're up and out and they're doing things. So there's so many reasons why children should be moving. So movement is really important. Even if you want them to be reading something, get them to walk around and read as they're walking if they're a little older. Movement, keep them moving. It works a treat and gets everything going in the brain. So let's go fishing and we find these hooks that I'm going to hook the children in so you can then work with them easily. So let's think about our environment now. So this is an environment in LA. It's at the top of some fancy resort that my daughter took me to when I was doing some work in LA. And this is, there's day beds there that people are lying on, and, people bring you drinks and, whatever, and the pool's there. So the way we think, act, and feel in that space is very different to how we think, act, and feel in a place of worship, whether it be a church or a temple or wherever your place of worship is. It's a very different feel. We think differently, we act differently, we speak differently. Same with if it's a wedding. The way we manage ourselves is very different to a football game. So the environment speaks. How we act, feel, and think is dictated by the environment that we create. That's why it's so important that we start thinking about where are these children learning? Where are they? Where are you teaching? What's the environment like? How does it make us act, feel, and think? And if the environment has got some key things that aren't quite right, then we're going to have behavior problems. We're going to have disinterested children. We're going to have children that aren't engaged in whatever it is you're trying to talk to them about. Children who don't listen, children who don't follow instructions. And there's a bit to do with the brain around that as well that I don't have time to talk to you about tonight, but maybe another time. But how we think, act, and feel is dictated by the environment we're in. Now, I want to take you on a journey now into the brain set environments formula. So this is an original researched piece of work that I've developed, and I'm now implementing this across the world and have been for about 5 years or so. And I've, as Charles said right at the very beginning, I've been in education for about 40 years, and I was a classroom teacher for 25, and then I went to work at a university and taught teachers how to be teachers. And now I have a consultancy business, and I go into different centres or schools and work with the teachers, and I also work with parents as well and do a range of different things. But BrainSet all came about because I had all of this experience and I had all of these ideas in my mind, but there was a little jigsaw piece missing. It wasn't quite coming together because there's lots of research about the environment and there's lots of research about neuroscience, but no one had brought them together. And that's what I've done with the BrainSet environments formula. And it happened because I read an article that a colleague sent to me, and all the pieces just fell into place. So some of the words in that article just really brought it all together for me. And we said before that the brain is really complex. It's got lots of different regions. But for simplicity, I've worked out that we have these 3 levels in the brain. And this is an adaptation of other research. So, but we have these 3 levels. So we have the survival part of the brain, and we said before that that's the brainstem. We have the limbic system that sits up here in behind the ear. That's where we keep our emotions in the amygdala, as well as other parts of the brain, but let's just say it's just there. And then we have the thinking part of the brain up here in the neocortex. So that's the S, the E, and the T in brain set. And these parts of the brain need to harmonize. And how do we do that? We do that by setting up our environment in a particular way. So we said that the brainstem is all about keeping us safe. That's our survival part of the brain. Now, the emotions where we feel threatened, or we feel happy, or we feel unsafe, or we feel as though we're a bit scared. That's where we house all of those emotions. So when those two harmonize, so the emotional part of the brain, the amygdala is saying, "Oh yeah, we're good here. Yeah, I feel safe." And the brainstem is going, looking around and going, yep, the roof's not going to fall down. The walls are safe. These people seem okay. I have a sense of safety. So now we have a sense of safety and I feel safe. So now the top part of the brain can shine. Now we can think clearly, we can remember easily, we can make really good decisions, we can communicate well, we can analyze different things and come up with great solutions. We can do all of that because these two parts of the brain are all harmonized and aligned. But what happens sometimes is if we feel under stress or we feel under pressure, this part of the brain up here, the amygdala, says, hey, brainstem, I'm not feeling too good about this. These people are a little bit threatening, or I don't understand this work that I've got to do. I feel like I'm under threat, or I forgot to bring all the pencils and all the things that I need. So now I don't know what to do. Now I don't know how to do it. So I'm feeling a little bit threatened. And so the brain stem then goes, okay, we've got to do everything we can to survive. So we're going to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So we're either going to fight, so we're going to say something mean, or we're going to push somebody, or we're going to do something that's a physical thing. So we're going to fight, or we're going to flight. We're just going to run away and say, no, I'm not doing this, and run away. And it's because these two aren't aligned. Or we might freeze, and that's the like, la, 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 it's not even happening. Or we could go into fawn to keep us safe. And fawn is, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Okay, yes, you're right, I won't do it again. So we can go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn when these two are feeling under pressure. And often we feel it in our gut because remember at the beginning we said about the vagus nervous system that goes down into our gut. So now we don't feel so well. So now we feel a bit under pressure. We feel uncomfortable. When that happens, we have this rush of cortisol that comes into the top part of our brain. And so now we aren't thinking as clearly as we could be, or it's not really helpful. We can still do things, but we can't do things as well. So we can still talk, we can still think, we can still do things, but it's not as clear. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and you felt a little under pressure and you walk away and you think, oh, I should have given them that example. Oh, why didn't I tell them that story? Because that would have proved my point. Have you ever done that? I have. I hope you're nodding. I hope I'm not the only person who's done that. But that's because we have this foggy brain. And I mentioned the foggy brain before when we did our breathing exercises. That foggy brain is that influx of cortisol or that flood of cortisol that we've got up here now. So when that happens, children can't think and react well either. So they go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So they're just trying to keep themselves safe. So children who have experienced trauma and adults too, and let's face it, most of us have experienced some sort of trauma, whether it's just being sick or whether it's going to hospital or whether it's something bigger. Most of us have experienced some sort of trauma. And when that happens, the cortisol is sometimes up here pretty high. So for some children, it doesn't take much to push them over the edge. It could just be that little bit of a raised voice or feeling threatened or being unsure. And the rush of cortisol puts them up here, and then their behavior reflects that. So what we need to try and do is reduce that level of cortisol, calm the brain. Remember the mantra? A calm brain's a thinking brain. And we need to have that sense of safety. And it's not just the absence of threat, it's the presence of connection. So by building really great relationships with your children, whether they be your own children or whether you be in the classroom, because it can be easy to be frustrated with the children. But if we can put that aside and maintain relationship and connection, that's going to help calm the brain as well and have that sense of safety. Now, another way to do it is by setting up our spaces in a particular way. I'm just mindful of the time. So, we've got three pillars of design. We've got the survival pillar, the emotional pillar, and the thinking pillar. So basically the S, the E, and the T. So the survival pillar is all about the design for learning, how we set up the space for the children. And I don't have time to go through all of these, so I've just picked a couple just to show you. We're going to talk about defined spaces because that's one that you could do straight away. And when we look at the feelings for learning, we have all these familiar things. Now, if you're at home, your child is already in a familiar surroundings. But if you're in a classroom, these are some of the things that you might want to include in your classroom space. Even if you're at home, if you make little spaces where there is like a special chair, a soft chair for your child, maybe with a table lamp next to it instead of having, the lights on in the house if you need to, or, you can have the natural light coming in, but also have a table lamp or a floor lamp just to soften it a little bit, or maybe some fairy lights just for a bit of fun. So, and having plants inside is important too, because nature is calming. So going outside into nature to do some of your work outside is good, or bringing nature inside. So it's not just plants. It could be pine cones, it could be twigs, it could be little rocks, it could be anything that brings the nature in. And then, of course, the spaces for learning, the third pillar there, that's just like a mix up of a range of different places to sit or stand, so that there's a bit of variety. Because remember what John Medina said, we don't do boring. So let's not do boring. Now, Brain Set is grounded in research. What I've done with Brain Set, I've used my 40 years of experience, and I've also cherry-picked from lots of different research and lots of different teaching practices. So you may have heard of Montessori, you may have heard of Reggio Emilia, you may have heard of Steiner schools, you may have heard of theorists like Vygotsky and Piaget and Maslow and a range of others. So what I've done is I've stood on the shoulders of those greats, and I've taken the things that I think are the most important from all of those different aspects of research and ways of teaching, and bundled them all together with my experience and my readings and the things that I've written and my research. And that's how I've created the Brain Set Environments formula. So let's have a look. Brain Set is all about critical thinking, and this is what we want for our children of the future. We want them to be asking questions. We want them to be able to gather information and analyze it and work out whether this is right. Now with AI, if we're using ChatGPT, that's not always correct. So we want children to be able to look at that and go, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Or I'm just going to do my own research. And they might research what ChatGPT told them. So we want them to be discerning. We want them to find their own solutions. We want them to be thinking about other ways, not just taking everything at face value. We want them to be thinkers and communicate effectively. And we also want them to be looking at the 4 C's of life that are just mentioned there. Alrighty, so play is the way. That's another little saying that I often say. And just to support that, there's some research there. For very young children, all important learning takes place within the context of play. Play is exploration. Play is trying things. So in play, children practice life. Play is trying to develop a sense of mastery of the world. And we never stop playing. Think about yourself as an adult. When people are a bit playful and, they crack a couple of jokes and they're playful, we remember that. We remember whatever it is they were telling us, or we remember where we were, because emotion is connected to cognition. So if we can have an emotion when we're doing something, we remember the learning that went with it. It's the same with children. So for older children, so for 12-year-olds, maybe it's a game of cards that, you're playing with them. For the younger children, maybe they're doing dress-ups. So play is the way. We all learn through play, or playful learning, as I call it. All right, so let's have a look at these defined spaces a little bit more. What are they, and what does this even mean? I was doing this one day and someone thought I said confined spaces, meaning you go into these spaces and you're not allowed out. That's not what it is. It's defined spaces. So it's making these small little spaces really obvious and really clear. and you define them by putting a mat on the floor or a table and a couple of chairs, or you might hang some vertical curtaining down or put some plants there. We're dividing the area up. So whether you're at home or whether you're in a classroom, if you can give children these smaller defined spaces, it does a whole lot of things. It allows them to focus more because there's less distraction, and then they're more engaged, particularly if you use that hook. You know, you've gone fishing and you're using that hook of the interests, and whatever's in that defined space relates to the interests. Children are going to be more focused and more engaged. It's a less threatening space. You think about if yourself, if you go into a big room and someone asks you to speak, all of a sudden you think, oh, I don't know what to say. I don't even know my name. I can't remember. I don't know. You get all panicky. And it's the same with children. So if we're in a smaller space, it's less threatening. And if there's one or two people there, if you're at home, maybe there is only one or two people, but if you're in a classroom, if we can have these smaller spaces, children are more inclined to speak. Oral language is the beginning of literacy. It's the beginning of reading and writing. So the more we get children to talk, the more we get them to think by us asking really good questions, the more we encourage conversation and the better the learning's going to be. Children can succeed at their own level because they're in this small little space and they're not feeling threatened, so they create amazing things, particularly if you have open-ended materials. That means not worksheets. That means not just one outcome. You can give them a range of things, and I've got a photo to show you, a range of things that they can explore and make their own conclusions. If there's lots of small spaces that they need to go into and there's other children there as well, they have to wait. And that means they have to become resilient, because that's a skill of life, not always getting what you want when you want it. So becoming resilient just by waiting is important. It expands their interests that they have, and they have the opportunity to repeat things over and over. And again, it's part of the brain development, repeating things over and over. I say repeat, repeat, elaborate. That means you do allow children to do things over and over and over, and then you put in something that's going to extend their skills a little bit more. Okay, so we can define spaces with these ideas. You can use all of these things here, and I'm not going to go through them all. You can take a screenshot if you want to, or have a quick read through that. But we can divide areas up in a range of different ways to make the room look interesting, because remember, we don't do boring, and we like to explore. So mixing things up a little bit, having lots of these defined spaces and defining them through in different ways makes it interesting. So let's have a look at a few photos just to sort of bring home some of these points. This is actually a grade 1 classroom in Melbourne. This is a friend of mine's classroom, and you can see there that she's got lots of little defined spaces the defined spaces, I should say, if you're in a classroom, should be for 1, 2, 3, 4 children. The biggest space would be for 6, and that's for the block area. And if you say, oh, yeah, but all my children like to do the blocks, that's fine. Have 2 block areas and have different things in the block areas to expand the experience. So you can see here, there's different spaces here, a range of different spaces. This umbrella is on purpose to make it sort of like a little shelter, like a little cubby house sort of feel to it. And that's called psychological containment or psychological safety. It helps you feel like safer, like a little cubby house. Having a space just like this, where there's vertical and horizontal drawing, also having the mirror there is going to promote skill development. For children who have experienced trauma, having that mirror there is really important, because now children can see what's happening behind them or who's coming up behind them, because children who have experienced trauma can be a bit jumpy. So, that's another way of looking at that. Open-ended is something like this. It's a range of different things. There's clay on this table as well, and the children are able to use any of these materials. So they're open-ended. There's no model there to say, okay, we're all going to make this. It's just a range of different materials that children can use in an open-ended way. These are provocations as well. The pliers here and the wire might be the additional thing you put into that space. So for maybe a week or 2 weeks, you decide when the children have sort of been using these open-ended materials and they've been creating amazing things, and you think, okay, it's time now for us to sort of, up the ante a little bit, add something else. You can show children with an explicit teaching strategy how to use these pliers if they don't already know, and what to do, what they might do with the wire, and talk about the safety aspects and all of those sorts of things. And that's the elaboration that you would put in there. So you would allow them to repeat, and then you throw in this provocation so that they can elaborate and do something at the next level. In the learning materials, you need to have a range of things, some structured materials, so it's got one purpose, so the scissors. And you need to have some semi-structured materials, so they've got a purpose. So it could be a doll or a truck. And then you have the open-ended materials that I was just showing you. And they're the things that we call loose parts, and they allow children to use their imagination and be creative and design whatever they need to design. And you can sort of help shape that by using really great questions. So tell me about this. I wonder what would happen if. So mixing it up a little bit. These are some numeracy or some maths spaces, and you can see it's just a range of different ways that you can use all of these different maths elements. But you can also see here how the teacher has made the space, this defined space for two. You can see how she's really dressed the table and made it invitational, made it inviting, so that children want to go there and experience these things. And these are sort of homemade things. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can use what you've got, repurpose what you've got, reuse what you've got, borrow things from people, do different things with what you already have. In a lot of centres, sometimes I'll suggest turning the table upside down and putting the learning experience or the open-ended materials on the underside of the table, the upside down table, just to make it different and define that space. Thinking about this nature inquiry, this is an interesting one because that's a horizontal mirror, and all of these green things have been selected. But here there's patterning, there's classifying, there's all the textures, there's smell, there's taste, there's counting, a whole range of things. And having a range of open-ended materials like this really encourages children to try things differently. If we do this, if we design a learning environment that has a lot of open-ended things and it's based on research, as BrainSet is, we will be developing these skills. And these are human skills as well as academic skills. And I've seen this happen over and over. When we do this well, we easily develop these skills without us even trying. It just happens naturally. So just a little bit of research to really support that. And we need to be thinking about the lighting. We need to think about the temperature of the room, the type of decorations we have in the room. And all of those things can reduce the stress in our brains and reduce that level of cortisol and add to children's academic performance, but also just life learning and developing those human skills. That third pillar that we have for the thinking part of the brain, just have a range of different ways that children can be seated on the floor, at a table, on beanbags, on cushions, standing tables. Mix it up a bit. Remember, we don't do boring. And the other thing I want to mention to you is colour. Now, could you imagine being in a colourful room like that for some children who are in early learning centres? Imagine being there for like 10 hours in the day. I'd get a headache in the first hour, I think. So it's not my sort of thing. I do some work with some people in South America, though, in Bolivia, and I showed them this photo, and they really liked it because they like the bright colours. And the thing is, these are the colours that we need to calm the brain. And whilst the people in Bolivia liked those bright colours, it doesn't actually calm the brain. So the brain can adjust to that and we can accommodate, but it's the colours of nature that we should be aiming for. So in your learning space, whether it's at home or whether it's in a classroom, we need to be looking for the colours of nature to calm everything down, because a calm brain is a thinking brain. So also, I just want to just touch on this. We don't have a lot of time, but I do want to bring this to your attention that some of us are hypersensitive. We don't like too much stimulation. Some of us are hyposensitive. The more we get, the happier we are. So for the sensory avoider, we would like the more neutral tones, the soft lighting, lots of nature, a more neutral palette, a little space that we can get between the wall and the couch that's just got a little mat in it and a little cushion and not much else. That's a great space for us. The hyposensitive person is a sensory seeker. So you might make the same space between the wall and the end of the couch and a little mat, but in it you'd put a pillow, a couple of books, might put some things to squeeze, some things that make noise, because they want to have that sensory experience. Now, in a classroom environment, there are children like this. In your home, if you've got more than one child, or even just mum, dad, and children, a child, probably this applies to you as well. We as adults can manage this, but children are trying to manage this. So, and it puts a lot of strain on the brain. So, just to bring this to your attention, making a nice little space for those sensory processing areas that we just talked about. Having an environment like this where there's too many things hanging down, there's too many things on the wall, and there's too much clutter adds to brain confusion. And I wrote an article about that, and I call it clutter, color, and clatter. Clatter is too much clutter, or it can mean just too much noise as well. So we don't want to have rooms like that, because whilst we can adjust, for children, they're working hard, their brain's working hard to accommodate all of this. And so they get tired, they get irritable, their behavior isn't all that great because they're struggling to try and, make sense of all of this extra information. This is a review for you. Think about the space that you're in now, both your home environment and your classroom environment. Think about the color, because that links to our thinking, our emotional and thinking parts of the brain. Are there too many bright colors? Too much going on? Use neutral tones if you can, and just small accents. So a nice blue cushion on the neutral base. What about clutter? Is there too much? Things aren't put away. Things are sort of a little bit disorganized, perhaps, because the brain likes order. Otherwise, we go to this brain confusion, and minimizing the clutter goes to the safety, the emotional, and the thinking part of the brain. And you can do that by keeping things relatively clear and only having purposeful things out and being intentional about what you have available. The clutter, and that can be just noisy, too much of it, and that goes to our safety and our thinking parts of the brain. So we would use soft furnishings and rugs to try and absorb some of the sounds, and we, try and avoid unnecessary background noise or outside noise as well, because that can be disturbing to those sensory avoiders. Okay, so just to finish off, we've got a physical environment where we need to have purposeful placement of things. We need to have safe spaces where children feel safe, when adults feel safe too. We need to have these social relationships and very secure relationships where, we can take a risk in the learning and we know it's okay. And we need time. This is the big one. We need to give children time to try things out and experiment and do things over and over. We need to give them time, not just put something out and say, okay, you've had a turn at that, let's put it away. Time. I work lots of places online like we're doing tonight, as well as face-to-face everywhere. That's my email address, and it's coming again in a moment, so you can contact me about that. I just wanted to bring to your attention too that twice a year I do this rural road trip where I go into the smaller communities in Queensland, and I work with the early childhood educators and run parenting sessions as well. So I've done one in May already, and in August I'm doing those towns in August. And if you're listening in from any of those areas and you want to get in touch with me or want to contact your local early childhood centre and have them book me, now's your chance. And if you would like me to come to your town and do something around parenting or around teaching or, the brain, I'm more than happy to do that. So that's my contact detail again, Kathy at futurestrongeducation.com. And this is something that you just might be interested in. There's 13 soft skills or human skills that we're trying to build in children so that, again, they can be successful adults. So you might want to take a screenshot of that too. Just thought you might be interested in that. Thinking about from this session, is there something that you're going to start that you're not doing and that has, stimulated your thinking? Is there something you're going to start? Is there something you're already doing that you're going to continue doing because we've reviewed it? Or is there something that you think, maybe I'll stop doing that. Maybe that's not going to help me so much or help the children that I'm working with so much. So what are you going to start, continue and stop? And I'd really like you to make a note of those things. It's almost like then a written contract so that you don't forget to start with, but you're also accountable then. And a reminder that when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. Because flowers are perfect. It's what's around them. And that's it from me. There's my contact details. The QR code takes you to my website. And it's been my pleasure to be able to quickly share the information that we've touched on tonight. And I hope it's been of value to you.
Thank you, Kathryn. That was amazing. 58, I've got a few kids of my own. And I think about this all the time. We as parents, when we first become parents, we have very little of this knowledge. And I think every new parent should have access and learn this information, because obviously 1 to 5, 25% or 0 to 90% by 5 years of age. It's such an important time frame.
Yeah.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got any questions or you want to take yourself off mute or show us your beautiful faces, or just ask a question in the chat, please do so. Kathryn's here for probably as long as you like, but we will probably cut it short, not long after 8:30, so she can go and have a cup of tea or whatever she wants to do, and we can let you all go as well. But if you've got any questions, please drop them in the chat or come off mute and ask your question. Kari, was this? Here we go. Kari, was there something you wanted to contribute to tonight? Do you want to unmute yourself?
I guess having worked in rural and remote areas, it's just the ideas you're bringing, Kathy, are such an important, it's just for parents, for teachers out that way. It's also good to know that you're traveling out that way, because so much of the work that I used to do as an advisory visiting teacher, going around to Emerald, Longreach, Mount Isa, places like that, we don't get a lot of that information. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys putting it on. By the way, I love your shirt, Charles. I think the trademark shirts are fantastic. So that was seeing that tonight brought a smile to my face, plus seeing you guys and having this opportunity. But it's just such a wonderful opportunity to have knowledge shared and to be on the call with families who are most probably teaching a lot of kids at home, or possibly teachers as well. And yeah, absolutely. School of the Air families. I've worked with a lot of BSDE families. I've worked as a governess and different things. And yeah, such important knowledge. So thank you. Don't want to hog the mic.
All good. So this has been recorded. We are still recording, and so we'll make it available to those people who were on the call, as well as those who were unable to make it. And yes, we'll make it available through School of Distance Ed by emailing them each of the schools. They too can access the information. So, Kathryn, I don't think there's any more questions there. I just wanted to thank you for tonight, your intelligence and your beautiful way of articulating. I think everybody who's on the call who hasn't commented is probably thinking, yep, I need to get a little less clutter out of my room. You were talking about colour, and I was thinking of my shirt, and Kari, you commented nicely, but I'm thinking my shirt's very bright. I need to become more dull. But anyway, hey, enough of me. Thank you so much all for joining us this evening. There is another Zoom in 4 weeks' time. You can find that at bush.org.au/Zoom. If you've liked this, tell your friends and family about it. There will be a link where people can access it. The more people who have access to this information, the better our children and our families in rural Australia will be. So thanks very much, and have a good evening. Thank you all.